question of determining what exactly constitutes free speech and who decides what is free speech or not when it comes to social media has come to the fore once again. It's the current burning debate after Twitter ostensibly seems to have been defined in complying with a government order or a government request, as you may want to put it, to suspend and block nearly 1,400 accounts on the social media microblogging site. Now, the government says that these accounts are being used to promote false information and provoking people in the wake of the farmers' protests. They say that some of these accounts have come from Khalistani sympathizers, some of them are from outside the territory of India, there are Pakistani handles behind these accounts, and many of them are automated bots. Now, here's what happened. The first time around, when the Ministry of Information and Technology put out this request, Twitter did take down some accounts for a few hours, but then restored them by the end of the day. Another request has gone to Twitter and also a notice for why aren't you complying with us. In response, Twitter has now put out a statement saying that they are following the process to look at this request from the government. It's going through a whole process review under the laws of the land and their own internal teams. And meanwhile, they've reached out to the ministry to thrash things out. Now, even as we wait to see whether Twitter will finally take down all of those accounts, it becomes a test case of sorts of how social media platforms really go about dealing with different governments all across the world. And of course, we're interested in what happens in the Indian context, where social media has become a huge catalyst of sorts to bring people together who want to protest, and also a way of spreading misinformation, fake news, which causes violence at times. So it's a thin balancing line there. Where do we stand right now, and why is this case important? I'm joined today by Nikhil Pahwa and Apar Gupta to speak on the issue. Welcome to both of you. Great to have you on the show once again. Nikhil, let me begin with your take on the current episode of Twitter versus Government of India.
Look, Tamanna, it almost feels like a face-off that's taking place, that, last time Twitter hadn't complied, so now the government is testing them again by sending additional URLs for additional accounts for blocking. And I think this is going to increase Twitter's risk, in the sense that if they choose to not block again, there could potentially be reason for the government to take action. Whether that reason is legitimate or not, whether the government's request for blocking is legitimate or not, no one can tell, because we haven't seen the orders. They're not open to public scrutiny. They haven't been disclosed by the government, and also under rules to Section 69A, under which these orders are likely to have been issued, Twitter is prevented from disclosing the order as well. So, if you remember last time, even the Caravans account was blocked briefly before Twitter restored it. And the point is that even journalistic organizations are now being censored through this mechanism of Section 69A. And the legitimacy of these orders is questionable. At least that you can argue that banning a publications account, entire account like this, is disproportionate. And I hope that this is something that will go to court eventually, and that the whether Section 69A is constitutional or not, that issue will finally get addressed, because it didn't entirely get addressed back in 2015, where the court felt that there were sufficient processes in place to ensure that this provision isn't misused. I think there is a case now for revisiting this to see whether it is now being misused by the government of India.
This is a face-off that Twitter finds itself in very often with governments all across the world. So what is the process here? Say the government issues a list of handles to Twitter or any other social media site, a Facebook account or any such, saying that we think that these handles and their actions are in violation of Indian law.
Yes.
Do the social media accounts, as per law, have to immediately comply? Do they have some time span to decide what to do?
So I think a lot of people who are watching this do not happen to be lawyers or people who are accustomed to the larger amount of legal powers which are there in the Information Technology Act. So let me just decontextualize it and just tell you under two broad powers how censorship is being exercised by government. The first is under notices which are being sent under Section 79 of the Information Technology Act. It should not be done, but it's being done. It basically is the provision under which companies such as Facebook and Twitter, which are serving as social media platforms, are not liable for the content which is posted by end users like you and me, and in which the immunity from prosecution or any kind of liability is open to them only if they fail to act on any notification from a government authority or a court order. Okay, so the government, but when it does issue order under Section 79, there's an underlying case, there's an underlying investigation, there's something or the other like that happening. The other power is to block websites, which has been conventionally used to take down and block domains and has been sent to internet service providers. That's under Section 69A. Right. And this is the power which has been also exercised in the recent past to block the applications which are called all these Chinese smartphone applications. Okay, as Nikhil just explained, a lot of the orders under Section 69A which are issued are happen to be secret because there is a rule which operationalizes how this power is exercised, which are called the blocking rules. And this is a Rule 16, which is the core fault here. Now, these kind of disputes do occur globally with respect to content. The government wants something to be taken down. It's not taken down from a social media platform. Sometimes the social media platform also takes down content by itself, because one also has to remember it has its own user policies, its terms of service, its privacy policies, and you can violate any one of them, right? And it applies its standards. That is far removed from a legal order or request which is made to it. And usually they do comply with it. The issue which is emerging here and today is that Twitter is essentially telling government, as per press reports, that the government's request happens to be disproportionate. And even though these powers exist under the Information Technology Act, it's adopting a much more constitutional interpretation of the fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression, in which it's saying that the directions which are issued to us appear to be disproportionate to any stated illegality as such. Now, of course, we can't scrutinize what are the reasons. Why are accounts being sought to be suspended rather than individual tweets? And one does not have a great amount of clarity, and also the ultimate users of these accounts, which happen to be people who are possibly running the cap.
They're saying that we are going through a process to look at the request that has come in from the ministry. They have not said that we think it's disproportionate, or they have not gone back and said we will not comply for XYZ reason. So we have to still wait and see what Twitter does, doesn't it?
They have said it with respect to the Feb 1st order initially, which was sent. They have stated it was disproportionate. And I can send across the press interview also and the quote which was said. It is said by a Twitter official off record, but it is there in a newspaper report. And also there's a ministerial response to it also off record, in which the ministerial response is there, in which the ministry is saying that it is not for Twitter to say that it's disproportionate or not. And it is not in a position to actually make these arguments the foreign platform. And Nikhil is also correct when he says that this is upping the ante, in which the government is now saying that, okay, you didn't comply with 248 requests, here, take 1200.
So, that's the thing. A lot of this information is coming off the record from sources. The official statements in all are only the ones that Twitter has now put out recently. The government has officially not said anything about this yet. Do you think we need to understand transparently what is going on, and do you really see this going to the courts?
I do, Tamanna, but I just wanted to address one point about proportionality. You see, blocking an entire account, to my mind, is disproportionate, unless it's someone who's been a repeat offender. So just because of one tweet, and if you remember, sometime last year, even Akar Patel, the former head of Amnesty International in India, his entire account had been blocked, and then within a couple of days it was unblocked without any reason being cited. To me, account blocking by itself is disproportionate. And instead of blocking individual offending tweets, the other thing that you have to remember is that from the leaked order which has been circulated and has been written about, it's evident that the government also asked for an entire hashtag to be blocked. Now, what you have to remember is that the same hashtag can also be used to spread, correct information. It can be used by people criticizing what is being said under that hashtag. So you're also banning legitimate speech by blocking the hashtag. You're also banning legitimate speech when you block the account. On the issue of secrecy over this order and the lack of transparency, let's remember that when it has been convenient for the government, they have also shared transparently why they're blocking certain things. So go back to the 2 press releases issued about the ban on Chinese apps. At that point in time, they indicated what they're blocking. They listed the apps. They indicated why they're blocking them. And so if they can be transparent about it then, I don't understand why they can't be transparent about it now. What is preventing them from actually, disclosing exactly which accounts and why? Because when there's transparency, then the government can be held to account on that particular issue. So and I think this is heading into territory which is very, very troublesome, where the government is just without any accountability. Because just remember that a government authority issues the order, and then there's a committee of government officials who validates the order subsequently. So there is no independent adjudication that takes place. And we know historically that the government is not going to disagree with the government itself, right? We don't know of whether there were, when even ban orders have been removed in the past, whether this committee has even been meeting regularly, because there's no transparency from the government. So I think there has to be a judicial process put into place, and that's where Section 69 ought to be amended, so that even in case of an emergency, there is some independent oversight that comes into this.
So that's the question, and that's the question I think that nations all over the world are grappling with, that who has the final decision? Is a social media company that operates in all countries and in several countries, many of them with different rules and regulations, do they get to decide who's on their platform, if the actions of people on that platform have any kind of impact on law and order or on the social fabric, etc., etc. So apart to answer that question, yes,
Tamanna, I think it's very important for the platforms that carry our free speech to be protected, and for platforms to also stand up to illegitimate orders or potentially problematic orders. Because especially when these orders are issued under the garb of secrecy,
but
to stand up.
Nikhil, but like for example, for example, the hashtag that you're talking about, and I will not say it, because but that hashtag talks about genocide. And the question is that should Twitter let that go through? Remember, Twitter also decided to block the sitting president of the United States, because they decided that his tweets were fomenting trouble in that country. So can you have different parameters in different countries in different contexts? Is it a problem if the government decides? Is it okay if the platform decides? Does the platform have the final power and is more powerful than an elected government? These are questions that need to be addressed. Apar, you want to come in on this? One second. Let me just get Apar in and then I'll come back to you. Let me just get Apar in.
So I think what Nikhil is trying to say, and Nikhil, feel free to correct me later, but I think Nikhil and I would be broadly in agreement. Of course, platforms don't have the final power, but they serve as important stakeholders in upholding free expression. And quite often, we need to view our system of laws and governance in a constitutional framework rather than in the framework of a specific political party or the political executive. It also includes our courts, right? What Nikhil was indicating was we need a judicial process. And essentially, a platform, especially a foreign platform, which is citing the doctrine of proportionality, which is maybe even saying that there's a high amount of secrecy is less than ideal. And this can be fixed by the government, by the ministry in charge, by just changing the rules. One does not even need to go to court. And then what would result as a natural consequence, what not only the accounts which are being suspended and their owners, editors, authors, but even the general public, people like me who possibly read the Caravan, can approach the Delhi High Court in a writ remedy and say that it's blocking my access of right to receive information, which is a part of my fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression. And here lies the problem, actually. I think the platforms by themselves are imperfect stakeholders to advance the fundamental rights to freedom of speech and expression, because their rights are derivative here on the basis of their users. And while they should do it, and it is appreciative, ultimately it should be the people of India, and as well as all our state institutions, which are the direct beneficiaries of our constitutional framework and need to carry it forward. And here the principal obligation and responsibility rests with who wields the power, and that is the ministry here.
Yes, Nikhil, you wanted to come in.
So I completely agree with Apar on this, Tamanna. I just wanted to add that platforms also, because the challenge with platforms is that they are private parties performing a public function. And so this is a unique situation in terms of how, whether we want to allow them the power to censor content on their platform by themselves or not. Now, they have certain standards, and I think they ought to have certain standards, especially related to repeat offenders and especially related to incitement to violence, which is what Donald Trump was accused of doing. So I think the standards that they have to set have to be proportionate with, to my mind, human rights standards, and in some cases with proportionate to the standards of free speech for that particular country. But they also have the freedom to, they should need to have the freedom to censor the content that they don't want to allow on their platform, because we can talk about Twitter here, and maybe Twitter should be, and Twitter and Facebook, but given their scale, should be judged with a different threshold. But let's say if I'm on a cricket forum and I run a cricket forum, it serves the same purpose as Twitter or Facebook do. And if someone starts posting about football and I feel that that might change the environment of the forum that I'm running and I want to prevent that from happening, I should have the right to do that. So, these are, at the end of the day, these are private platforms. Again, I don't think they should have the right to override a government order. But if there is if there is a government order that is probably not in line with what the law states, I think they should have every right to challenge that order, because their objective here seems to be to protect our speech.
Will they challenge it? Yeah, that's the question. That's the question, which is what government sources have been saying, that Twitter has not challenged this in any court of law. The question is, will they, or will they eventually comply? It's a very interesting case that we need to track carefully to see how it goes forward. Well, I want to thank the both of you for joining us on this discussion this evening, a very important one.